Seraphina opens her eyes to find herself lying on the hard floor of a dim cell. Confusion immediately washes over her as she tries to move, only to feel the heavy weight of shackles pulling at her legs. Her hands are similarly bound, and a cold metal collar sits tightly around her neck. The realization hits her with the force of a physical blow. She has been taken prisoner. She remembers the chaos of the battlefield and the bitter taste of defeat. It is a deep sting to her pride that she, a noble commander, was bested by those she considers mere barbarians. The narrative shifts back in time to the year 1342, in the rugged eastern territories of the continent. The air is thick with the screams of dying men. A fierce battle rages between the disciplined forces of the Illidan kingdom and the wild barbarian tribes. Seraphina, the captain of the first company for the Eastern Expeditionary Force, stands in the middle of the carnage. Her soldiers are panicked, reporting that the barbarian resistance is far too strong. The volunteer troops have been wiped out, and their left wing is falling apart. Seraphina maintains her composure, shouting for her men to stay focused. She refuses to let them forget they are knights of Illidan. She quickly barks out tactical orders, telling the left wing to pull back, while the center and right wings extend to form a protective formation. Her goal is no longer victory, but a fighting retreat. She knows that even if they escape, their losses are catastrophic. This marks the end of a 7-year-long expedition, and her only priority now is ensuring that as many of her comrades as possible make it back to their homeland alive. Suddenly, the sea of soldiers parts as a massive man carves his way through the battlefield. This is Veor. He stops when he sees Seraphina, noting her distinctive crystal helmet. He correctly guesses that she is the general of the expeditionary force. Having grown bored of slaughtering common foot soldiers, he challenges her to face him in single combat. Seraphina recognizes him as one of the barbarian elite. She realizes that if she ignores a man whose blade can shred plate armor like paper, her troops will never escape. She accepts the challenge, viewing it as a chance to buy her men the time they need. She tells her lieutenant to take command and to inform her brother that she gave her life for her country. The duel is intense and brutal. Seraphina fights with every ounce of her strength, even praying to the legendary Princess Wistarizia for help. However, the sheer power of the barbarian is too much. With a final resonant strike, Veor shatters Seraphina's sword. Standing defenseless, she demands that he kill her and end it. To her shock, Veor refuses. He tells her that she belongs to him now. He promises that she will survive, mostly because he can think of many good uses for her body. Back in the present, Seraphina sits in her cell, dwelling on those haunting words. She wonders if she will be forced into hard labor like a farm animal, or if she will be tortured for information. The thought that she might be used for the base entertainment of men fills her with a deep sense of shame. As an unmarried noblewoman, the idea of being treated like an animal in a den of savages is unbearable. She also worries for her troops, fearing that the time she bought wasn't enough for a proper withdrawal. She feels the heavy weight of failure, knowing that without control of the East, her people back in the capital will continue to suffer. The sound of footsteps interrupts her thoughts as a woman named Circe enters the cell. Seraphina immediately demands to know who she is. Circe introduces herself and explains that she serves the man who captured Seraphina. Seraphina assumes Circe is there to extract information through torture, calling her a barbarian girl and accusing her of bringing implements of pain. Circe calmly explains that she has only one order: to ensure that Seraphina, who is being called a victory trophy, is prepared to her master's liking. Circe ignores Seraphina's protests and begins to adjust her restraints. She chains Seraphina's hands above her head to prevent her from struggling. Seraphina braces herself for the worst, vowing that she will never submit to torture. Meanwhile, out in the wilds, Veor is busy hunting. He thinks of Seraphina, calling her his treasure and anticipating that she is finally awake. Inside the cell, the treatment Seraphina receives is not what she expected. Circe begins to bathe her, scrubbing away the blood and filth of the battlefield. Seraphina is confused and demands to know the meaning of this. Circe simply remarks that Seraphina was a mess and needs to be clean. She admits that she expected a more brutish woman given Seraphina's skill with a blade, but she finds that Seraphina actually has a very feminine figure. Seraphina feels mocked, stating that a knight has no need for femininity. Circe tells her that her opinion doesn't matter because she has caught the master's eye. She warns Seraphina that she will never leave this place again. Once the bath is finished, Circe applies scented oils to Seraphina's skin and dresses her in new, soft clothes. Seraphina is baffled by the treatment, wondering why a prisoner of war is being pampered and perfumed. She fears that this might be part of some strange barbarian ritual or sacrifice. Suddenly, a booming sound like thunder echoes through the area. Circe identifies the sound as belonging to her master. Veor enters the cell, his presence filling the small space. He notes that she looks completely different now that the grime of war is gone. He introduces himself properly as the heir to Great Chief Ulden One-Eye, known as Thundering Voice Veor. Seraphina is struck by his massive size and his glowing golden eyes, convinced that he cannot be entirely human. She introduces herself with all her noble titles, stating that she is Seraphina de Lavillon and that she will not beg for mercy. She tells him to proceed with whatever human sacrifice he has planned, so that she can at least die with her dignity intact. Veor finds her talk of sacrifice confusing. He looks at her and simply states that he brought her here to be his bride. Seraphina is stunned into silence before shouting in disbelief. She accuses him of trying to trick her or lower her guard for a ritual. Veor points out that if he wanted to kill her, he wouldn't have waited this long. Seraphina argues that they are enemies, and that no one marries their enemy. Veor explains that while the West might have different rules, his clan has a long tradition of taking lady knights as brides. Seraphina calls the logic insane, but Veor reminds her that she already told him he could do with her as he wished. He then explains his real motivation. He tells her that his decision isn't just based on tradition, but on the respect he felt when they fought. He says that the way she swung her sword spoke more than any words ever could, revealing a profound sincerity. He admits that he fell for her in that very moment. Before Seraphina can process this confession, Veor tells her to relax because he won't take her against her will. He leaves the cell, promising to speak with her later. Circe remains behind, bluntly telling Seraphina that she is being courted. The story shifts to a flashback from 7 years ago in the Illidan Kingdom at the Margrave Lavallant estate. Seraphina's brother, Sidious, informs her that the king has ordered the 17th Eastern Expedition to begin. He tells her she has been named the captain of the first company and charges her with earning glory for their family name. He also mentions an invitation to a banquet from Countess Ildhal, addressed to Princess Seraphina. At the banquet, the atmosphere is shallow and judgmental. The other nobles whisper about how the war is profitable for them, despite the poor quality of food lately. They look at Seraphina, remarking that she is more dashing than beautiful, and questioning the point of a woman being a strong warrior. Seraphina feels out of place and escapes to a balcony, wishing she could just go home. She is joined by 3 noblewomen who lead her to a gazebo. They talk down to her, calling the East a place of monsters and dragons. They refer to the barbarians as animals who kidnap and sacrifice women. Seraphina becomes angry, banging on the table and spilling wine as she defends the expedition. She explains that conquering the East is a noble goal for the peace of the people. The women dismiss her, telling her she should leave such things to men. They mention that even the legendary Princess Wisterizia went missing on the battlefield and claim that a woman's only true happiness is marriage. On her carriage ride home, Seraphina is fuming. She looks out at the starving people in the streets and contrasts their hunger with the wasteful feasts of the nobility. She sees 3 desperate men attacking a traveler and intervenes. She stops them without even drawing her sword, realizing they are only acting out of hunger because the crops have failed. Feeling deep sympathy, she takes off her own expensive collar and gives it to them so they can feed their families. They are overwhelmed with gratitude, promising never to do evil again. Seraphina tells herself to endure the hardships of her position so she can eventually conquer the East and improve the lives of her people. Before she leaves for the expedition, she kneels before an image of Princess Wisterizia, asking the lost princess to watch over her. Her brother, Sidious, approaches her, but instead of offering support, he asks if she failed to find a husband at the party. He tells her that a woman wanting to be a knight is selfish and that she needs to marry while she still has prospects. He dismisses her ambitions, saying that a sword has never changed policy. The memory of her brother suddenly distorts. His face twists and grows until he transforms into Veor. The barbarian looms over her, repeating her name over and over, demanding that she become his bride. Seraphina jolts awake, her heart racing. She realizes it was a nightmare brought on by the barbarian's presence. However, as her eyes adjust to the light, she realizes the nightmare isn't entirely over. She looks to her side, discovering to her horror that she is currently sleeping right next to Veor. She scrambles back, her voice trembling with shock as she demands to know what he is doing in her presence. Veor sounds genuinely confused, asking why she would even question his presence in his own bedroom. Seraphina's panic only intensifies as she realizes she is in his private quarters and, even worse, that he is completely nude. Veor seems unbothered by her distress, remarking that she is making quite a fuss for such an early hour. He adds that it is good to see her so full of energy after the events of the previous night. This comment sends Serafina into a tailspin of fear and confusion. She realizes she has no memory of what happened after her capture and tells him she isn't even sure she wants to know. She reminds him of his promise not to force himself upon her, but Veor simply tells her not to worry about the small details. This dismissiveness infuriates her, and she calls him an animal, warning him not to treat a lady's honor so lightly. Internal conflict wars within her. She worries that if she were to bear the child of a barbarian, she would be creating a new enemy for her beloved homeland. Overwhelmed by shame and the disgrace of her capture, she begs Veor to kill her immediately. Veor is perplexed, noting that while he would understand if she wanted to kill him, seeking her own death makes no sense. Serafina explains that the shame of defeat, being taken captive, and the rage she feels while facing a nude opponent have completely destroyed her honor as a knight. She believes she is an embarrassment to her name and would rather die than live with the misery. Before Veor can respond to her plea, Cersei enters the room carrying a bundle of dry clothes. She looks at Serafina and notes that the prisoner has finally woken up without any more trouble. Cersei explains the reality of the previous night. After Veor brought her back, Serafina suffered a mild overdose of the sleeping drugs used to keep her quiet during transport. She had suddenly started vomiting before collapsing entirely. Veor admits that he was actually quite worried about her. Serafina feels a wave of relief mixed with embarrassment as she realizes her imagination had run wild. Veor apologizes for the misapplication of the medicine, explaining that it was a paralytic poison used by his people to help wounds close by, slowing the blood flow. He adds that he brought her to his room specifically so she could rest and recover, noting that he certainly can't have his future bride dying so soon. Serafina finds his explanations confusing and frustrating. She demands he hand her a sword so she can beat some sense into him, but Veor just laughs, seeing that she is finally healthy enough for breakfast. He leaves the room to wait for her, mentioning that she hasn't eaten in the day since she left the battlefield. Serafina remains behind, feeling a strange sense of shelter within these barbarian walls. She thinks back to her grandfather, who once told her that her talent for swordplay might prevent her from finding true happiness as a woman. She remembers the harsh words of her brother, who viewed her knightly ambitions as a selfish indulgence. But then she remembers Veor's words, how he claimed to see sincerity in her blade and fell for her because of it. She struggles with the idea of being desired for her femininity, something she has ignored for years, especially coming from a barbarian captor. Serafina decides she will maintain her pride through her diet. She expects the barbarians to serve her the bare minimum to break her spirit, but when she enters the dining area, her jaw drops. In front of her sits a massive piece of meat. She realizes that even in the capital of her homeland, she has never seen a feast this grand, especially given the recent crop failures. Veor offers her what he calls a small portion, a quarter of the roast, but the piece of meat is literally larger than her own torso. She immediately suspects a trick, accusing Veor of trying to use luxury to tame her and winnow away her knightly pride. She declares she would rather starve than be indulged by savages, but at that exact moment, her stomach betrays her with a loud, echoing rumble. Blushing, she once again asks Veor to kill her to end the embarrassment. Veor lectures her calmly, stating that if her body wants food, it means she wants to live, and refusing to eat is just a lie to herself. He speaks with surprising gravity about the respect one must show for a life taken for food, arguing that taking a life should never be done for sport. Cersei approaches and quietly informs Serafina that Veor went out and hunted this specific animal alone just to welcome her. She reveals that Veor is essentially the equivalent of Western royalty, and for someone of his status to go to such lengths is a great sign of hospitality. Not wanting to bring shame to her name by being rude to a prince, Serafina finally takes a bite. The meat is incredible, tender, juicy, and full of flavor. She thinks to herself that not even the royalty of Ildoran have ever tasted anything this glorious. When she asks what kind of meat it is, Veor tells her to look out the window. He explains that it is a dragon. Serafina is nearly choked with shock, as dragons are legendary fire-breathing monsters in the West. Veor clarifies that while fire breathers exist, this was a different breed. He notices that despite her shock, she isn't slowing down her eating at all. Cersei dryly observes that the prisoner doesn't seem like she intends to die anytime soon. Later that day, Veor tells Serafina he wants to show her something on the mountain. She is hesitant to trust him, but he brushes off her concerns, suggesting that common sense changes depending on where you are. He baits her by asking if she is simply afraid, which prompts her to get ready just to prove him wrong. As they walk, Seraphina is surprised by the richness of the nature surrounding them. It is far more bountiful than the wastelands where they fought. They eventually reach a massive, roaring waterfall. Seraphina is mesmerized, admitting she has never seen one before. Veyor then tells her to strip so they can bathe. Seraphina is outraged by the suggestion of mixed bathing, calling it indecent and a barbarian practice. Cersei steps in, telling Seraphina she is starting to smell and that they don't have bathhouses. She promises to accompany Seraphina while Veyor goes to a different stream to give them privacy. While bathing, Cersei mentions that she is there to keep Seraphina safe from the monsters that inhabit the area. Seraphina sees several strange creatures nearby and panics, running away from the water before she is even fully dressed. In her haste, she gets lost and worries about running into a real savage. Suddenly, she spots a young man standing in the clearing. She is struck by how handsome and beautiful he is, thinking that few men in the West could match his looks. He is clean-shaven and elegant. The young man notices her and assumes she was startled by beasts while bathing. He mentions that his mother was a Western knight from the 16th expedition and tells her she shouldn't catch a chill, offering her his coat. Seraphina is flustered by his gentlemanly behavior, wondering why such a refined man is living among barbarians. When he gets close to check if she has a fever, she turns bright red. He eventually picks her up and carries her back down the mountain princess style. When they finally encounter Cersei again, the maid smiles and asks Master Veyor how this situation happened. Seraphina's heart stops. She realizes the beautiful, handsome man carrying her is actually Veyor. He had simply shaved his beard. Veyor chuckles, admitting he didn't have time to tidy himself up before his initial proposal. He teases her, noting that a simple shave made her blush like an innocent maiden. Seraphina is so embarrassed and angry that she slaps him right across the face. Veyor isn't bothered, admiring the strength of her strike and reiterating that he likes her for a reason. As they walk back, Cersei mentions that Veyor spent the morning patrolling the area to keep her safe from the dragon they had for breakfast. Seraphina manages to forgive him this one time because the scenery was nice, but she warns him it won't happen again. Veyor is happy with the arrangement, calling her a gracious wife. Seraphina yells that she hasn't agreed to be his wife, but deep down she admits to herself that he is much easier on the eyes without the beard. However, a few days later, the thick wild beard has already regrown completely. She wonders to herself why he would ever let it grow back. A while later, Seraphina silently prays to her mother and father in heaven, genuinely fearing that her life is about to reach a violent end. She stands surrounded by a rowdy, aggressive group of warriors who look like they are ready for blood. They shout at one another, arguing over who gets the first chance to strike at the legendary crystal helmet. One younger man demands the first opening, but a more seasoned fighter calls him a foolish pup and insists that he should be the one to go first. Seraphina watches them with wide eyes, wondering how she ended up in the middle of such a terrifying mob. To understand how she reached this point, she thinks back to the conversation she had with Veyor just a short while ago. Veyor had told her that he was making preparations for a major meeting. He explained that he had summoned the elders of all the different tribes so he could formally introduce her to them. He pointed toward a massive settlement in the distance, explaining that it was Lakeside Village, the ancestral home of his people and the largest village in the entire region. Seraphina was shocked that he would reveal such a significant location to her. She asked him why he was sharing crucial military secrets with a prisoner. She argued that if she were ever rescued by her own army, she could lead them straight to their territory and potentially destroy them. Veyor simply laughed at her concern. He asked her if she was still feeling enchanted by his shaven face from earlier, which only made her more frustrated. She snapped back that she was merely confused and told him to stop being so childish. Veyor teased her, noting how charming she looks when she is embarrassed. He then told her quite seriously that her worries about escaping would disappear once she lost the desire to return home. He reminded her that his goal is to make her his wife and ensure that she truly falls in love with him. In the present, Seraphina is still struggling to process the chaotic scene in the village. She assumes the warriors are seeking revenge for all the men she has killed on the battlefield. Veyor tells her not to be so tense and promises to handle the situation. He addresses his warriors with a powerful, booming voice, thanking them for the warm welcome they have given the crystal helmet. He explains to the crowd that she is here as a guest to eat with the elders and asks them to calm their excitement. To Seraphina's total shock, the bloodlust in the air vanishes instantly. The warriors agree to back off simply because their leader asked them to. Seraphina asks Veyor what is happening and why these people have gathered. Veyor explains that they aren't here for an execution. They are here to welcome her and are hoping for a chance to spar with a warrior of her caliber. She is baffled, asking if they don't want revenge for their fallen comrades. Veer asks the crowd if anyone bears a grudge against her, and the warriors shout back that they hold no ill will. They begin to shower her with genuine compliments, praising her brilliant display of skill from their previous battles. They call her a magnificent warrior and a beauty, with some even joking that they wish she could have been their wife instead. They speak of her strength with deep respect, hoping she will eventually bear strong children. Seraphina is flustered, reminding them that she is technically an enemy commander, but Veor explains that his people simply have a deep appreciation for the strong. Veor decides to attend to some errands and initial discussions with the elders, so he leaves Seraphina and Cersei in the care of a local household. He approaches a house where water is being boiled and asks the woman inside to show them hospitality. He casually introduces Seraphina as his future wife, which earns another shocked protest from the knight. The village woman is delighted by the news, noting that Seraphina has the same striking eye color as the great chief's wife. She invites them inside with overwhelming familiarity, ignoring Seraphina's attempts to explain that they have only just met. Inside the house, Seraphina meets two women who are raising young children named Gatar and Ina. The first woman apologizes if she was too forward earlier, and Seraphina accepts the apology, noting that forgiveness is a virtue of a knight. The women offer them medicinal tea, which is a common drink in the village. Seraphina watches the young children, noticing how sure-footed and sturdy they are even at such a young age. She realizes they are already building the foundations of warriors by mimicking the adults around them. As they drink the tea, which Seraphina finds surprisingly refreshing and restorative, she discovers that the two women are not related by blood, but live together for support. Both of their husbands passed away some time ago. One died in the wars to the west while his wife was still pregnant. Seraphina's heart sinks as she realizes these men were likely killed by her own Eastern Expedition forces. She feels a sudden wave of guilt, telling the women that she cannot apologize for the war, but that she is willing to accept their hatred. She tells them they have the right to take revenge on her since she is now their captive. The women are confused by her offer. The first woman explains that while she is sad her son never knew his father, she feels lucky to have her child. She tells Seraphina that death is a constant part of their lives, whether it comes from war, hunting dragons, or being weakened by age and monsters. They don't view death with the same lingering bitterness that Seraphina expects. The knight is struck by how differently these people perceive the cycle of life and death compared to the people of her kingdom. The peaceful moment is shattered by the shrill sound of a dragon whistle. Cersei identifies it as a signal that they are under attack. A type of dragon known as a Baikshi suddenly slams into the house, destroying the structure. Cersei explains that these creatures are drawn to smoke and fire, though it is unusual for them to enter a village. Seraphina tells everyone to run immediately. When the dragon focuses its attention on them, Cersei urges Seraphina to flee, fearing what Veor would do if she were hurt. Seraphina refuses to run away. She tells Cersei that the barbarian's casual attitude toward death is starting to annoy her. She proudly declares her full name and asserts her identity as a knight commander. She grabs a pair of metal fire tongs from the ruins of the house to use as a makeshift weapon. Cersei thinks she is crazy for trying to fight a dragon with kitchen utensils, but Seraphina tells her to be quiet. She notes that the dragon's power is nothing compared to the strength of Veor's sword. She insists that as a knight, she will never retreat when there are people behind her who need protection. She manages to strike the dragon's eye, screaming at the women and children to get to safety, while she holds the beast back. Elsewhere in the village, Veor and the other warriors are busy taking down several other dragons that have invaded. When Veor learns that a dragon landed on the house where Seraphina was staying, he doesn't wait for another word. He moves with incredible speed, leaving his men behind to rush to her side. Seraphina is out in the open, realizing that the dragon is faster than she anticipated. Her fire tongs eventually snap, leaving her disarmed. As the creature prepares to lunge at her, she accepts her fate, feeling that even if she dies, she will at least die as a true knight. Suddenly, Veor appears and slays the dragon in a single powerful motion. He rushes to her, asking for her forgiveness for being late. He thanks her for protecting the villagers and Cersei. He tells her that more than anything else, he is simply relieved that she is safe. Seraphina suddenly finds herself bursting into tears. She is confused by her own emotions, wondering why she is crying over the words of a man she is supposed to consider her enemy. That evening, the villagers and their guests huddle around a roaring fire. Seraphina sits with a cup in her hand, drinking steadily to calm her nerves. Cersei watches her and remarks that the knight certainly seems to enjoy her liquor. Seraphina sighs, admitting that the afternoon was a complete disaster. She feels embarrassed for behaving so emotionally in front of so many people, yet she cannot stop thinking about the fact that this was the first time a man had ever stepped in to protect her. Cersei notes that Serafina seems much more personable now than when they first met. She confesses that she never expected to find a noble who was truly willing to risk her life for the safety of others. As Cersei goes to fetch more alcohol, Serafina stares into the flames. She wonders if the drink is making her soft, but she finds that she doesn't mind the current atmosphere. Suddenly, tiny figures appear in the air around her. They are fairies, and they begin to tease her, laughing about how she looks and how she reacted earlier. Serafina assumes she is finally drunk enough to start hallucinating. She asks what these tiny winged creatures are, and Veor appears at her side. He tells her not to be so surprised, as she is about to see something even more incredible. Other mystical figures emerge from the shadows alongside Veor. They are humanoid creatures who look upon Serafina with respect. They have heard how she defended the villagers from the dragon, and remark that it takes incredible grit to face such a beast head-on. The women Serafina saved join the group, explaining that this party is being held specifically to thank her. Fairies and other spirits cheer, bringing out special liquor made from the sacred tree. Serafina watches in a daze as winged people and animated plants join the celebration. She wonders just how far these hallucinations will go. A group of dwarves approaches Serafina. They tell her that finding a wife for Veor is a cause for great celebration, and believe it is the guidance of the great spirits. To mark the occasion, they present her with a sword. Serafina is hesitant to take such an expensive gift, but Veor encourages her to be gracious. He promises that the blades from this forge are masterpieces. When Serafina inspects the weapon, her professional eyes widen. The blade is perfectly consistent without a single distortion. It is thick, decorated with tasteful fluting, and balanced expertly at the hilt. The grip feels as though it clings to her hand, and the metal gives off a faint, pearly glow. The dwarves explain that the sword is made of a true silver alloy that people in the West call mithril. Serafina is stunned, recognizing the metal from the epic legends and tales she grew up with. Veor then takes the opportunity to formally introduce the leaders of the various clans. He presents the three wise elders of the Quefto dwarves, Vas, Guas, and Balhath, along with a sorcerer named Karka Roth, a spirit of the sacred tree named Nimhala, and the fairy queen Viufumek. Serafina struggles to process the existence of elves, spirits, and fairies. Veor explains that they are not characters from a book, but their neighbors who live alongside them in the land of Cornem. Karka kindly tells her that they are used to people from the West reacting this way. Nimhala offers Serafina a leaf to chew on, explaining it has a sedative effect for those who are overstimulated, though she mentions it occasionally makes people foam at the mouth. Serafina realizes that unlike dragons, which are just beasts, being able to talk to these legendary races is a massive adjustment. Serafina asks why these creatures have never appeared before her during her 7 years in the Eastern Expedition. Veor explains that they purposefully avoid the West. He reminds her that he arranged this meeting specifically to introduce her to the 5 great tribes that form the Tribal Alliance. This alliance is not a military force built to fight Ildoran. Instead, it is a cultural union of people who understand the nature of the land and the cycle of life. When Serafina asks if the Alliance views the Ildoran invasion as a crisis, the leaders laugh. Veor explains that the Alliance doesn't get involved in territorial disputes. He admits that from their perspective, the war is viewed with the same gravity as animals fighting over territory. Serafina is offended that her life's work is seen as a petty squabble. Veor clarifies that while dragons are fierce, they are not the true threat. He speaks of monsters called fiends, which are like living disasters. He tells her that he would rather die fighting a knight of Ildoran than face a fiend. The Fairy Queen begs them to stop talking about such scary things so they can get back to the celebration. The night continues with toasts and jokes. The dwarves tease Veor about having children soon, remarking that Serafina looks like she is of sturdy stock. The fairies demand that she give Veor a kiss, which she flatly refuses. Despite her protests, Serafina feels the warmth of their blessings. She learns that the dress and necklace she is wearing were also gifts from the tribes. Karka explains that the sword he enchanted will repair itself, meaning she will never have to worry about maintenance. Serafina begins to realize how truly blessed this territory is. The next morning, Serafina wakes up with a pounding headache. Cersei greets her, noting that the elders have already gone home, and it is already afternoon. Serafina reflects on the previous night, realizing it wasn't a dream, but a reality she still has much to learn about. Veor greets her, and they sit down for a lunch of sandwiches made from the meat of the dragon Serafina killed the previous day. Though she finds the meat a bit gamey and juicy, she admits it tastes quite good. Veer tells her they have some walking to do because someone wants to meet her, an acquaintance from her past. Serafina cannot imagine who she would know in this wild land. They arrive at a house where a woman is waiting. The woman expresses her excitement and tells Serafina it has been a long time. She identifies herself as Nylea, a former knight who served under Serafina's command 4 years ago. Serafina is shocked, remembering Nylea as the daughter of a viscount whom she believed had died in battle. She notices that Nylea is heavily pregnant and learns that this will be her second child. Nylea invites them inside to explain her story. She reveals that she was proposed to by the man who defeated her in battle and has since built a happy life in the village. During their conversation, Serafina questions why Nylea treats Veor with such familiarity, even asking him to run errands. Nylea laughs and explains that in this land, authority works differently. She then mentions that Veor is only 18 years old. Serafina is horrified, unable to believe that a man with such a massive beard is 8 years younger than her. When Nylea tries to mention Serafina's age of 26, the knight quickly silences her. Veor, however, remarks that her age is the prime of womanhood and suits him perfectly. Veor then offers a heartfelt apology for his earlier arrogance. Nylea explains to the group that Veor's victory over Serafina wasn't as definitive as it seemed. She points out that although Veor is strong enough to shatter stone, he was unable to land a single blow on Serafina. He only won because Serafina's ordinary steel sword eventually gave out after clashing with his superior weapon and his high stamina. Veor looks embarrassed, admitting he relied on equipment and luck to win. Serafina finds herself softened by his humility. Nylea's husband, Vidal, and their son return home, and the family's happiness is evident. Serafina watches them and remembers how Nylea used to talk about her duty to water the land with barbarian blood. Seeing how much her old subordinate has changed and how happy she is makes Serafina feel a strange mix of emotions. That night, Veor and Serafina speak alone. Serafina admits that these 2 days have shown her how little she truly knew about his people. She confesses that she called them savages as a justification for invasion, ignoring the fact that they have families and culture just like her own people. However, she maintains that she is still a noble of Ildoran and wants to use what she has learned to save her suffering homeland. Because of this duty, she tells him she has no intention of being his wife. Then, she quietly adds that while her duty forbids it, speaking as an individual, the idea of being his wife doesn't sound bad. Veor is overwhelmed by her honesty, telling her it isn't fair for her to be so sincere. The next morning at breakfast, Veor is in a wonderful mood. He teases Serafina about how charming she was the night before. Serafina, flustered, tries to claim it was just the liquor talking. When Veor suggests that she didn't mean what she said, Serafina becomes defensive and angry. She shouts that she isn't shameless enough to say things she doesn't mean and insists that her words last night were her true and honest feelings. Cersei quietly observes that Serafina is now confessing her love even without any alcohol, while Veor simply smiles, remarking again on how lovely and unfair she is. Following the playful breakfast, the conflict reasserts itself. Deep within an unfamiliar forest, a woman named Alyssa leads weary soldiers through the undergrowth. Her face twists in disgust as she mutters about how absolutely revolting the region is, complaining that local forces obstruct their eastern expedition and kidnap their heroes. To her, it is an insult to contend with mere barbarians living beyond the light of civilization. Anxious about low supplies, the troops want to retreat. Alyssa glares coldly, reminding them they are honorable knights. Warning that matching the failed campaign from 20 years ago would bring disgrace, she declares that rescuing Lady Serafina is the only way to fulfill the Order's dream of Eastern conquest. Meanwhile, a peaceful atmosphere fills the village where Serafina is hard at work. She swings her newly acquired sword with precision, cleanly splitting a log in a single stroke. She examines the blade, marveling at its fine edge. Cersei comments that the pile should suffice for today's firewood. Serafina asks if they are done, prompting Cersei to smile and point out that Serafina cut a 2-week supply in just 3 days. Serafina explains that if all she does in this village is eat and sleep, her physical body will lose its competitive edge, adding that she wants to familiarize herself with the weapon. Cersei asks if her noticeable restlessness has been entirely due to pure boredom. Serafina admits that spending so much time without official strategic meetings or intense physical exercise is a massive change of pace from how her busy life used to be. Cersei notes that Serafina has never actually assisted with basic household tasks, prompting Seraphina to admit she honestly should have done her fair share back when she was a squire. However, she reveals that her grandfather applied political pressure on her mentor knight, ensuring she was exempted from menial chores. Cersei remarks that a major noble bending the rules like that is scary. Cersei then brightens up, telling Seraphina that she highly doubts she will have any time to remain bored today, gesturing toward the path where Veor walks into the clearing with an enthusiastic grin. He asks if she cares to spar with the village's top warriors, prompting Cersei to mention that Veor had previously brought up some bright idea to resolve her frustration, though she admits she was not expecting something quite so meat-headed. Seraphina looks past him, her eyes widening as she takes in the massive crowd of armed men gathering in the square. Realizing she cannot simply send them away after they took the time to assemble, she accepts the challenge. Veor turns to Cersei, politely asking if she could go inside and bring out Seraphina's proper armor. Cersei readily agrees, telling them to give her a brief moment. Seraphina asks Veor if they actually had her knightly armor in their possession all along. Cersei explains that once the armor was taken off, she personally wiped all the dried blood and thick mud away, though she has only managed to perform the bare minimum of daily maintenance. Seraphina reassures her it is more than enough, noting with sadness that her protective helmet could not be fixed. Cersei brings the heavy pieces and offers to help her put the suit on. Seraphina asks if she actually knows how to properly fit knightly plate, and Cersei gives a confident nod, reminding her she was the one who took it off her in the first place. As Cersei adjusts the straps, Seraphina thinks to herself that most ordinary people absolutely cannot remove and equip specialized armor without extensive prior experience, wondering about Cersei's hidden depth. A short while later, Seraphina steps out of the house completely clad in her armor. The heavy plates clank with every step, commanding everyone's attention as she formalizes her presence and apologizes to the gathered crowd for the brief wait. She declares that while she is officially a knight commander of Ilduran, they know her better as the Crystal Helmet. She challenges the assembled men to see if they can successfully alleviate her boredom. The village soldiers instantly erupt into excitement, cheering loudly at facing such a famous opponent, with one eager young man jumping forward and screaming that he wants to go first. Seraphina tells the crowd there is no need to rush. Veor steps forward to establish the basic ground rules, clarifying that they will use safe wooden swords. Seraphina nods in agreement, stating she expected as much from a proper training exercise. Veor turns to the crowd and loudly introduces their very first challenger for the famous commander, pointing to a young warrior who experienced battle for the first time in their most recent conflict, introducing him as Raham. Veor commands both fighters to comport themselves with honor and officially signals for the match to begin. Without a single moment of hesitation, Seraphina closes the distance with blinding speed, striking him precisely before he can even register her movement. Veor doesn't waste any time, loudly calling out that the next challenger is Gamelan. The older warrior steps into the ring, fiercely declaring that he will now avenge his grandson. He rushes forward, but Seraphina disarms him and strikes him down just as quickly, dryly observing that both the father and the son fight in the exact same manner. Another muscular soldier asks to go next. Veor grants permission, introducing the warrior as Two-Necked Sero. Sero steps up to face the knight commander and offers his sincere thanks because when the dangerous Tsukebi dragons attacked their village, she bravely protected his sister and his young nephew. But he adds that the spar is an entirely separate matter, firmly asking her to show no restraint. Seraphina respects his conviction, agreeing to his terms. Sero launches a powerful assault. Despite his impressive skill, Seraphina successfully parries his heavy blows and finds a clean opening, sending him tumbling to the dirt. The watching soldiers look on in awe, murmuring among themselves about how both Gamelan and Sero were taken down with total ease. Far from being discouraged, the remaining men shout that they are now really fired up, rushing into the ring one after another, and Seraphina effortlessly defeats a vast multitude of challengers. Standing on the sidelines, Cersei watches the display with wide eyes, muttering about how strong Seraphina truly is against these skilled warriors. Lady Vaeufumek appears beside her, stating that considering the raw willpower the Ildoran knight utilizes, her dominance is no surprise. Cersei admits she is still not entirely sure what willpower actually is. Vaeufumek explains it is simply the absolute strength of one's inner will and desire to achieve a goal. She notes that birds flying, fish swimming, dragons possessing power, and the Tefyu being free all stem from this same source. Vaeufumek elaborates that the Tefyu do not possess blood or flesh, being the living dreams of the elements. While the long-lived Ixt, Quefto, and Kufuek have flesh, Humans live for a short time. Because of this brevity, human warriors develop an incredibly potent willpower that sharpens technique, increases strength, and gives life to fighting styles. Techniques strengthened by willpower can only be contested with willpower. Cersei clarifies if willpower determines the winner when physical prowess is equal, and Viufumek confirms it, musing that this powerful desire appears truly dazzling, making the humans visibly shine. Right then, Veor steps into the ring to face Seraphina. They clash in a furious explosion of speed, their wooden swords moving in a blur until both simultaneously shatter. The soldiers declare the match a draw. Seraphina notes she did not win, and Veor laughs, admitting he could not risk losing after their first encounter. Seraphina asks if he is still worried about what she said the other day. Veor denies it, asking if the exercise eased her boredom, which Seraphina happily confirms while thanking him. Cersei comments on how they transition to laughing after fighting seriously. Viufumek enjoys the lively willpower, hinting that booze would make the outing better. Suddenly, a village lookout runs in, reporting that a severely injured Morasuberi dragon is heading their way from the western woods. Veor hardens his expression, while Seraphina senses a bad omen. She notes that local dragons typically avoid villages and recalls the lookout mentioning multiple beasts bearing human-inflicted wounds. In the forest, village soldiers lure the monster into a trap, tying it down with ropes. Veor calls to Seraphina, who delivers the final blow. Veor explains it is a six-legged true dragon. They find a deep burn wound lacking soot or charring. Veor notes it resembles Ixtrijutsu magic, and Seraphina realizes the western clergy of the Order of Comuneros must be involved. Viufumek arrives in a panic, warning that people are using magic without a catalyst, meaning a corrupted natural disaster called a blight will soon manifest. Veor orders his elite warriors to follow him. Deep in the woods, Alyssa fanatically declares they cannot turn back. Veor's group arrives just as Alyssa uses a blinding light to obliterate another dragon. Seraphina calls out to her, but Alyssa immediately demands Veor's death, calling him a wretched barbarian. Seraphina tries to calm her, but Alyssa rants about their 700-year war and blasts a tree, claiming God's miracles prove their righteousness. Veor tells her not to steal power from the earth, offering to discuss terms, but Alyssa attacks him with light projectiles. Veor shields Seraphina, absorbing the blasts unharmed due to his willpower-fortified armor. He dismisses her magic as lukewarm, challenging her to use a blade. Alyssa panics, blindly draining the land's vitality and twisting nature. Veor warns Seraphina that the woman cannot be saved as time has run out. Suddenly, blackened roots erupt and trap Alyssa. Seraphina moves to save her, but Veor blocks her path, declaring the blight has fully manifested. Alyssa screams as she is swallowed by the roots, which break out into dozens of grotesque eyes, revealing the true nightmare of a living fiend.